What's up, the internet? It's Kyle and Jenna. We're back on the EXP Expo 2022. Our next guest is working on some technical stuff. Arvell, if you get it, just give me a thumbs up in the camera and we'll be good to go. But I wanted to stand up to make this introduction because it's one of my dearest friends in the industry, one of my favorite people. The overall great person and great creator. Marvel legend Arvell Jones will be joining us here in just a minute. Hopefully he can hear us. Working on some technical stuff. All right, he can hear us now.
Yay!
Yeah?
All right. I'm using two computers, so maybe one of them needs to be muted.
This is the one. No, leave it just like it is. It's working. Let's not mess with it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
My favorite story, and you'll appreciate this, we had Larry Hama on one time. And Larry goes, I can't figure out how to turn my webcam on. And so we're talking to him. He goes, I'm going to call one of my family over to fix it. And they come over and they go, Grandpa, you don't have a webcam on this computer. So, you know, we always have technical issues, but when we get them working, we just don't mess with them.
Yep.
Okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, everybody who's watching, Arvell Jones, legendary creator, and again, one of my favorite people. Every time I see Arvell and he smiles, and I get to give Miss Wanda a hug, it reminds me of why I love this industry. The people you meet and the people you get to hang out with. So, for the uninitiated, Jenna, Arvell, can you tell us how you got into comics? And really, I just always love hearing the story of Detroit Triple Fanfare and the fanzines and the work that came out of Detroit.
Oh, well, I kind of got into comics the old-fashioned way. There were no internet. Nobody knew what that was. In fact, it didn't exist. I went to one of those circular comic racks at I think it was like a Cunningham's drugstore or something, and started reading Superman and Batman. My cousin came over, my first cousin, Winston Williams, and looked at what I was reading. He says, "You're reading Superman and you know, some of these other crazy characters." I hadn't really gotten started. He says, "Let me show you something." And he brought over the X-Men and the Avengers. And I got introduced to the artist, Jack Kirby. And, you know, I started, I was instantly enthralled with the art and wanted to start drawing. So I did some drawings that kind of look like Jack Kirby and things. And then once I've done a set, I sent him the Marvel addressed to Jack Kirby. And then on a, I don't know, must have been like a Saturday or Sunday, my father's phone rang. I was probably 13 years old. And he says, my father picks up the phone and he says, you got a long distance call from somebody named Jack. I didn't know any Jacks. So I said, Jack who? He said, he looked at me like, come get this phone, boy, before I hang it up. So I went over and picked up the phone, and lo and behold, it was Jack Kirby on the phone. And he looked at my drawings and he told me, you got what it takes to get in this industry if you want to, because that was maybe in my letter to ask. And at that point, everything I'd read about Jack King Kirby, he just gave me the go-ahead to get into comics. So at 13 years old, I decided that was going to be my mission, to get into comic books. And I tried to ask him a few questions, but long distance cost money back then. And so he just wanted to respond real quick. He had moved to Thousand Oaks, California. And, he just encouraged me and told me, I had a good shot. And then the call ended. I think it was more little more than a minute or two, but that was about it. And from that point, I felt like I was on a mission. I met some other kids in the neighborhood who were kind of into comics, and then graduated to finding some fanzines. I can't remember where I found them. I joined the Marvel Marching,
Mighty Marvel
Society.
Marching Society.
Oh my god!
Got their kit and they had a little plastic, really flexible 45 record. That's for you uninitiated. You have a needle on a turntable. You drop the needle.
I'm a little older than everybody thinks. I'm just saying.
I'm just trying to think if I could go get my MMS record out, if it's here at the office or if it's at home. I just picked up the original kit from the mid '60s from a collector.
Oh yeah.
All of my records are in the bedroom, so I can't
had
get them.
everybody on it, including Jack and Stan, so I knew how everybody sounded. And I was just excited. The way they were describing the bullpen sounded like a lot of fun. I couldn't think of another, career path that I would enjoy more. Certainly not where some of my friends were and their older brothers were going, which was to the Chrysler plant, which was in about 8 to 10 blocks from where I lived. And I said, I don't want to do that. And everything else sounded boring, doctor, lawyer, maybe firefighter and policeman, but that sounded dangerous. So I went to my father and told him that, I was interested. Really, I was more interested in going into television and creating my own TV shows or the movies. So I thought I'd hit him up with the expensive stuff first. He turned me down. Long story short, he turned me down, gave me a bunch of pencils and some typing paper, and told me to put together my own stories. And if anybody was excited about what I was writing, then he would help me get the film camera. And back then it was like an 8mm, not even a Super 8.
Oh.
And so we did that. And I drew a bunch of stuff up. He gave me a pile of comic books. I was using those as reference as well. And I started drawing my own comics and then showing them to my friends, first at school, then as people, oh yeah, there we go. From there, I sought my way out to find Jerry Bales and Detroit Triple Fanfare and comic book swap meets, and I started hitting those. And on the internet somewhere, there's a shot of me way in the back of this auditorium in a room full of industry professionals, including Roy Thomas and John Verporten. And, I think everybody was pretty much there. And they got a shot of me way in the background. Identified me on the internet. I'll see if I can find that link and send it to you. But I was like 13 years old in New York at the New York Comic Con. My father invested heavily in anything his sons wanted to do. And he just thought what I wanted to do, he wanted to be an artist at one point, but he was not supported. So he did everything for his sons. So I started a fanzine, met Rich Buckler and Greg Theakston and Mike Fosberg, Tom Orzechowski, and then later Jim Starlin, Al Milgram, Terry Austin, and a bunch of other Detroiters. And we started putting this fanzine together. My primary focus was to interview everybody and learn how the industry worked and become a part of it. And there were no schools or anything. So, I had to reach out to these actual people. So having a fanzine or a newsletter, which is what it was, gave me the opportunity to meet, all kinds of industry professionals. My father took me to see Dan Atkins, who lived in Youngstown, Ohio at the time. Me and Greg Theakston. Later, I got a car for graduating high school, and my first out-of-town trip was to Chicago to meet Russ Heath, who was living in the Playboy Tower at the time. He was in the penthouse, on that penthouse floor. And I was very impressed because when he opened the door, two Playboy bunnies came out and said, "We'll see you later, Russ." And he said, "I'll be here." And we went in, and I looked at his apartment, which at the time I didn't know the difference between a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and studio. As I look back on it, it might have been a studio apartment. But all I saw was this huge space when I walked in. And I thought to myself, this is how comic book artists live. They got beautiful girls. They stay in penthouses, and all they do is draw cartoons for a living. And, we had an interview. It was him and Greg Theakston and myself. And when I went to see Dan Atkins, he was staying in a house, and he had a mobile home behind the house. And we actually stayed in the mobile home behind the house. And then he had a nice little studio set up. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Plus, Jack Lemmon influenced me in a movie called How to Murder Your Wife. If you ever see it, he plays a comic strip artist, writer artist, and he gets in trouble for changing his strip to a how to murder your wife kind of thing. And that gets him in trouble, but still he had a butler, and wow, so I was all in. This was going to be my life. And then I ran into Rich Buckler, and that was going to be his life. He was really into it. And then later, like everybody else, I met Keith Pollard at a Comic-Con, and we looked at each other's work, and I said, hey, you draw pretty well. Maybe we can work on stuff together. And he looked at my work, and he says, you're not good enough.
Oh my goodness.
That was okay,
knowing Keith, he'd probably still say that today, wouldn't he? Just to give you a hard time.
Well, he's a little more diplomatic now, He enjoys working with me,
Yeah.
But he's still the boss when we work together.
Sure.
But
sure, absolutely.
Yeah, so as I kept running into people and going to more comic conventions, I was, me and Keith and Tom and Rich and everybody would make pilgrimages up to New York to show our portfolios. And John Romita would take the time and, grill us and, look at our work and tear us down and tell us we'll never be good enough. But we were undeterred, I should say. And we kept coming back for more and more punishment. Till finally he looked at our portfolios and said, between Keith's work and your work, and looking at our strong points, my strong point was storytelling and his strong point was drawing. But he did very boring drawings. Stuff didn't look exciting, although it was pretty accurate. Mine was crazy and, exaggerated Barry Smith, Jack Kirby kind of things, And he said, together you guys would make one heck of a Marvel comic artist. So he says, I bet you if I give you guys an assignment, you could probably handle it as long as you work together. We left the meeting and Keith's whole attitude towards me changed. He looked at me and told me, I'm going to pick your brain. I'm going to know everything you know. And I said, really? And I didn't say anything, although I was thinking, well, if you're picking mine, I'm picking yours. But in his head, since I didn't say anything, he thought he was under no obligation to teach me anything. But I learned. And we both got our shots around the same time.
So I have an image I want to show you.
Yeah.
This is the 1969 Comic Art Convention luncheon.
Right.
The Statler Hilton, July 5th, 1969.
Right.
And if you see in the top right-hand corner, there's a mirror directly to the left of the mirror. That's Arvell.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Here is a close-up.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And you got Phil Sewling right in the photo with you. Don McGregor's there.
Hal Foster.
Al Foster. I mean, lot of. Well, if you go through the list of people who were at this
track over from where Don McGregor is, you'll see Rich Buckler.
Let me grab that photo of Rich. There it is.
As we, got to know one another, we all made a pact that if one of us got into the industry, we would all get in. And Rich was the first one, and then Tom joined him about a month or two later. Tom Orzechowski, and then Jim Starlin. And I think Milgram came in behind him, and then behind Milgram came Keith and I, and then Terry Austin and Mike Nasser, who later is known as Netzer, and it just continued from there. There's Greg Theakston, next to Ron
Alan
Butler,
White,
who is Rich's brother, and
right, and Rich is directly to the. I can't click on Rich.
Oh wow. Yeah,
it won't
Rich
let me click on it.
Right on across the table from Ron, and that was the Detroit contingent that went that year, and we were just, we were putting out the fanzine. It was called Fan Informer, and it was horrible, but it was more of a showcase for our artwork, but we called it a newsletter because every once in a while, Roy Thomas would slip us some news, or Nick Cuddy. Yeah, there's Rich with the glasses.
Yeah, there's Rich.
On.
I had to click on Al to get a picture of Rich. But...
And there's Roy and Gene Thomas at the time.
Mike Nolan, John
and
Buscema in the background.
Professor Jerry Bales is in there, and John Verporten, and Hal Hewitson. Wow.
Oh my
God.
Yeah, that's.
I'm in awe. I'm completely speechless.
Right.
So I don't know if you see the comments though. So Ronald Shepard, he said he hasn't had the opportunity to meet you in person, but he did ship his large sketchbook to you for a Sandman pen and ink commission, which is a gem in his collection. And then he goes on to continue, says, after the first commission, you did a 11x17 Luke Cage and Misty Knight pencil piece for him. He is eternally grateful, and it is a pleasure to see you today. And then he says, you did everything through the mail forum, and not every artist would have done so, and he thanks you so much.
Oh, well, I was honored to do the work, and, I wish I had been a little faster, because he had to wait a little while to get everything, but I was anxious to get to it,
So there's something, and again, this is something that people, I don't know how well documented it is. it is around here because it's so, it's our neighborhood. But there were a gang of guys from Detroit and Ohio, northern Ohio, and kind of northern Indiana that in the Bronze Age of comics went to Marvel and DC and changed the entire look of the war of the industry. You, Rich, Keith, Tony Isabella as a writer, so many,
Starlin, Milgram,
Jim Starlin, Al Milgram,
Mike
Tom
Foster.
Warzakowski, guys. If you ever use Comic Sans font, that is a ripoff of someone trying to do Tom Warzakowski's lettering.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Tom, he's done almost every issue of Spawn, and before that, he was an X-Men letterer from the time he got on there to, until I guess Chris Claremont left. Yeah,
and
so a bunch of great logos. I think the Wolverine logo is his, and a version of the Avengers logo is his. Done a lot of good logos.
I'm actively hunting that Avengers logo. I picked up a piece. Well, I picked up a piece of original Keith Pollard art in a sale, and the guy who has it thinks that the Avengers logo, he has just an Avengers logo stat that he thinks is Tom Warzakowski's Avengers logo, but he has no proof.
Yeah,
he has no proof. So, so you're still working, which is crazy, which is great. Like, and the work you're doing is still really cool and really different. One of my favorite books that I have of yours is the book you did, Lazarus, with the hip hop artist. And it's one of those. How are you approaching work today differently than you approached work when you were younger? And then, are there stories that you're still excited and looking forward to trying to tell?
I'll answer the last question first. There are a ton of stories that I want to tell. I'll give you one example. The character Misty Knight was based on a character that I brought to Tony Isabella when we were working on Marvel Premiere featuring Iron Fist. And Tony didn't like the name I had. So we, it was all about compromise. He was the writer, I was the artist. And he was looking for another character for Danny Rand to talk to. So he was sick of writing these captions where, the dragon stamps his foot and whips his tail when they're fighting. And so, I suggested the Misty Knight character with a different name. And she was a little more powerful than Tony wanted, because Tony looked at the character as being a sidekick. And I kind of looked at the character as just being another superhero. He said superhero, he said sidekicks are never more powerful than the main title character. How would that look? So we fought about that for a while. I tried to convince him that that wasn't true all the time. He told me to give him an example. I said Batman and Superman. If you read those Bold and Beautiful, Batman is obviously the main character. And Superman is, is his sidekick, because, Superman does everything Batman asked him to do.
Yeah,
he doesn't order him, but he does ask him, can you take care of that wall for me? Can you look behind it and see if anybody's there?
Who needs those gadgets when you have Superman?
Right. Yeah, you don't need nearly as many gadgets when you have Superman.
But anyway, Tony didn't agree, so we depowered my character a little bit, and she got a name change. You know, the name Mercedes survived the conversion, and instead of having two cybernetic arms, she has one. But I got to write the Bible afterwards, so I sort of sneakingly upgraded her, or gave Marvel a way to upgrade her anytime they got ready to, so she could get to where I needed her to go. But I just point that out because I never got a chance to. We worked on the first issue together, which she appeared, and then I never got a chance at Marvel to work on a character again. So she doesn't have a proper backstory. Well, she does, but you know, I didn't put all that in the Bible originally, and so there's a whole Misty Knight, you know, origin and backstory that, you know, the world has never been exposed to. But that's one example. There's a ton of other, you know, projects that I'd love to do, and I got ideas just swimming in my head. I'm a collaborator, so I like to, you know, get a team together and do that. And because of my other life choices, you know, I left the industry a lot earlier than I wanted to. And so I just try to keep my hand in it enough so that if I ever can just sit down and work on it stuff again, I'd be capable and it wouldn't suck. As for how I work, I've not been afraid of technology. I worked at a TV station locally here in Detroit for 11 years. And at some point they decided to start running the news, and they had a device that was pretty much like Photoshop on steroids called the Quantel paint box. And I learned to master that before they actually put Photoshop out on the market. And had a tablet and everything, so I learned to draw digitally. But I prefer good old fashioned, you know, pencil to paper. But I incorporate a lot of what I do, and I'll use computer assist stuff to just move things a little faster at times. Right now, I'm working with a program called Procreate, and working on a project that I'm hoping I can complete it in. It'll be the first time I've actually done a project completely digitally. That's a comic book project.
Nice. I use
I'm having
Procreate for
fun.
a lot of our graphics.
Mm-hmm.
I can't draw anywhere near as well as you can, but I use Procreate for a lot of our graphics on here.
Oh, okay.
So let me ask you this. In the College for Creative Studies,
Mm-hmm.
you taught a lot of people this craft. You've always got. We always are talking about, when we would talk, I'm talking to so and so. I had them as a student at the College of Creative. You know, scores of people who were comic book professionals. So how did you come to that part of this industry and that field as an educator?
I think it was our upbringing here in Detroit. You know, there was no one to walk around and learn from here in Detroit. And we generally had to hit the road, you know, go to New York, or I think, you know, like I said, to Chicago or Youngstown, Ohio, or even Atlanta to meet with various artists, you know, as we did interviews and things. And then we'd always, you know, sit with them and find out, you know, what kind of tools they used and what their techniques were and how they learned the craft and things like that. And everybody started off as somebody else's apprentice. And so we, you know, and artists were learning from one another. So we as a group would go to various conventions. We wouldn't all go to the same conventions all the time, but we'd always get together maybe once a month and sit and review each other's work. And we were pretty harsh about telling people, you need to tear that piece up. That piece is horrible. Don't embarrass yourself. But we look at each other's work, and we praise each other and encourage each other, but we wouldn't let each other embarrass each other. So we were pretty pragmatic as that, because the object was to get in and become a professional. And so, I learned various shortcuts and secrets and things from Rich and Starlin and Keith, and they learned from me too. We studied styles and tools and what works and what doesn't work. And once we went to New York and stayed for a while, people would come to us in the freelance room at Marvel, and we talk about technique and work. Klaus Janson, John Romita Jr., Ed Hannigan. A lot of folks would come through there, and we talked to them. Rich was steadily working, and I was being his assistant for a while. George Perez, and a lot of people would come through, and we'd look at each other's work and discuss, techniques and what works and what doesn't work and what we liked about various people's work. And that never left me. So when I came back to Detroit, me and Keith were kicking it around. Why don't we share our knowledge with other people? And we took on a couple of students, and then those students started telling other students, and we looked up and said, hey, man, we got about 25 people that have their hands up and said they want to learn from us. So we created a set of workshops that we would do, once or twice a year, for 5 weeks. And we try to cram all the necessary information. You wouldn't have to ask, what size does my paper need to be? And what size does my brushes need to be? And can I use crayons? And, whatever. And we did it first for adults. And then one day I got a phone call from a mother. And she said, why don't you teach this to kids? And we said, well, we're more professionals. We're interested in helping people get into the business. And she says, well, how are they going to know they want to be in the business if they don't have an opportunity to learn anything about it? And we said, okay. So I said, well, look, lady, I would do it, I guess. I'm trying to get out of it. I said, but, we can't accommodate a big classroom. And she said, well, how many students would you need to do a class? I said, with kids, I don't know, maybe more than 1 or 2. I think it'd be too pricey for us to work on. She says, how would 5 be? And I said, yeah, 5, if we kind of came up with a fee, and we said we do it on Saturdays for 4 weeks. And she agreed how much she'd be willing to pay. And we said, okay, and you get 5 other students, that'd be great. When I finally came to this spot where we were going to have the class at, there were 18 students. She said, well, she said, I looked at the size of the room and you look like you could handle a lot more students. So I got a group of mothers together, and we all have our kids here. And she set it up so that we would do that at the Oakland Mall. And, we thought it was purely in the interest of the child, but we found out, that they all go shopping for 2 hours. While we taught some of the kids. But the strange thing about that story is I was at the last regular San Diego Comic-Con, and one of my students from that section was in Artist Alley about 2 rows behind me. And I didn't recognize him. He came up to me and said, hi, Arvell, how you doing? Now he's like, 20 years old or something. And And he says, "You got me into this." And I said, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry." And he said, "No, I love it."
Who was
and
it?
He said, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I said, "No." And he gave me his name. It was Nick Nix, as he called him, And he was an inker. And he was really good. He worked for Image. And I said, "Wow." Yeah, he was a really nice guy. And,
Nice.
And I run around Katie Cook and Dave Perrin, and there's just a lot of folk that we would help. And then there were some that we never got around to, and or there was some that got a single session, and I'm credited with scarring them for life. But they managed to get in the business anyway. So that's how we did.
You mentioned you have some stuff that you're working on that you're not allowed to talk about. Which is just exciting for me because I know I'm going to see you in like 3 weeks at Macomb at Great Lakes Comic-Con, and then I'll probably see you in a few weeks after that in Toledo at, our convention. I think you're scheduled to be there. If nothing else, I'll see you in the fall, right? So, with the stuff that you're not able to talk about, which I love, anytime my friends say, "Look, I have this thing I want to talk about, I can't talk about it," that to me is just a surefire sign that I'm spending money in the future. So I should start saving now.
Yeah.
So I love that answer from people, by the way.
No, okay.
But are they traditional comics projects? Are they? I know you've done some advertising stuff in the past. I know you've done some TV and film stuff. What kind of, can you give us a hint as to a genre or a medium?
Well, I'm actually doing a traditional comic book project for one of the major companies. I guess I'm allowed to say the name, but that might give away too much, so I'm better not. And I'm on a really tight deadline, but I'm looking to have just to do something a little different. It's a different kind of project, not a superhero project. Well, it's a superhero project, but it's not your known superheroes. And maybe that's all I can say.
Oh, I'm sold already.
Yes. So, Jenna, do you have any questions for Arvell?
I have two. I've got the fun one and the serious one. Which one do you want to go first?
Since I don't know what you're about to hit me with, just as long as it's not a gotcha question.
We don't do that here.
No.
Your choice.
All right, let's start with the serious one. So I've been kind of like touching a little bit on the last interview. I'm going to touch a little bit more here since you've been in the industry a lot longer. You've been able to see it really kind of like transform the way it has. How do you feel about, since we have this paper shortage going on right now, how do you feel about so many of the comics moving over to like the first issue or the first half of the first issue being digital and then moving on to a full graphic novel or a full trade? Like, how does that feel different from monthly books?
To me, comics are comics. If I got an iPad, so I read a lot of stuff on my digitally now. Actually, I think I've run out of room to keep buying books. I sort of do, but every time I bring one in, the wife has a new rule: for every one that comes in, one has to leave.
Oh.
Fortunately, mean. I have a son who's in his 30s. That's been happy to relieve me of some of my collection.
Happy to keep the circle going for you. You get a new one, he gets a new one. I like it.
Yeah. He doesn't buy anything. He just gets to read them. And I tell him they're still mine. And he says, "Sure they are, Dad." You can come visit them whenever you want, as long as I'm home.
Because he knows if you come and visit him when he's not there, they'll go walkabout, won't they?
Oh.
Yeah. You know, so
which
you
one
know, I don't
do you
know.
prefer?
I asked my wife if it was okay for me to still buy books. And she said, of course. Thank God for graphic novels that are hardcover.
Trust
But
me,
even those
yes.
shelves are filling up now, you know. I could show you a steel shelving unit, and the middle shelf is, you know, built like this now, you know, so caving in.
Oh my
You know,
gosh.
it's got to be about, you know, about 500 pounds worth of paper on that, you know. Dead trees on that one shelf. Yeah.
Goodness.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is you like being able to read it digitally, but you also like owning like the actual trade rather than like single issues?
I would take them in any form I can get them in. I like the idea of being able to pick the stories I want to read and not having the editor tell me, well, you got to read this one and got to read that one. So I guess I'm really, you know, I grew up with those pamphlets. So those are my absolute favorites. However, you know, the graphic novels are cool because then I don't have to keep running around trying to, you know, find a book if I miss it.
Yeah.
You know, or paying those absorbent back issues. You know, I got a lot of books that I own and I can't even get to them. You know, they're like stacked underneath other books, and then if I were to get to them, now I'm reminded by my wife, who is now fully educated in the ways of comic collecting, that I can't open those books anymore. And why isn't that particular book, you know, slabbed and,
Yes.
you know, don't open it, you're going to decrease the value. I'm like,
Well,
I
she
never
knows
really
that any
cared
of the
about
books with
that.
your name on it need to definitely be slabbed and protected and put away.
I have some books that I feel bad about because my brother and I used to collect books, and we found out we were having a problem sharing. So we would go to the comic store, and I would buy a copy of Fantastic Four, and he would buy a copy of Fantastic Four. And before the concept of collecting came along, I'd write my name on mine, dang, in ink. And sometimes that ink would bleed from the cover to page 3.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but now that's an early Arvell Jones signature.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that could be looked at like that.
That's how you market that.
Yeah. Look for the Arvell Jones collection. It's the one with all of his names on it.
Right.
Yeah, but also I would roll that comic up and put it in my back pocket and go play baseball.
I had the same problem. With my early comics. I had a Walking Dead #1.
Mm-hmm.
This was before Walking Dead was big. There was this comic book store in San Antonio. They couldn't even, like, nobody would buy them. So they just, like, they knew that me and my cousins came in every week, and they were like, here, take this, try it. And I rolled it up and I would put it on in my back pocket, get on the horse to go out to the pasture to take care of whatever animals were out in the pasture that day. And then I would read it, roll it up and put it back. And now my cousin has it, and he's like, yeah, it's missing like half the pages. It's all rolled up. And I'm like, oh man, back right there.
Oh man.
All right, so now I'm going to ask you the fun question.
All right, ask me the fun question.
Okay, so since it is so cold outside everywhere, I want to know, what is your favorite type of grilled cheese sandwich, and what kind of soup do you drink with it?
Well, I don't really eat grilled cheese. I'm a vegetarian.
Okay.
And although I do eat cheese, I have a hard time just eating bread and cheese.
Okay.
got to have some lettuce, tomatoes, and onions, and whatever else I can find to throw on it. But
so the answer is
so
fancy.
if I were to answer that question, it would be one that has more than grilled cheese on it.
Yeah.
And multiple cheeses work really well. So
Yeah.
if I'm gonna have cheese, I'm gonna go all out. So.
All right.
What would be the perfect soup to go with it?
I don't really like hot food. If I'm sick, minestrone. Let me see, cheese, broccoli, mushroom.
Ooh.
I'm just getting hungry.
Fresh vegetables. My wife would call them gumbo.
Yes, gumbo.
Yeah.
I'm here in South Texas. Most of my family's from Louisiana, so we know our gumbos well.
Yes. Well, none of them would have any meat in it, though. So she'd throw all kind of peppers in it, and,
Gotta get that okra and that celery, a little bit of onions, bell peppers.
Yep. Okra is probably my least favorite vegetable.
Oh no!
When it's boiled, it's just too slimy. But other than that, first time I got some okra, my mother put it on my plate. And she said, "Here, have some of that." And she said, "How did it taste?" I said, "I don't know. It went down too fast." I think it's
when you come
down.
back.
She says, "No, it's a vegetable." Thought I had ingested an alien.
So when you come back to town, I've got a new vegan vegetarian place to take you.
Oh,
and
okay.
you know me, I'm a meat eater, but I even like this place. They got a not quite chicken and waffles that will just knock your socks clean off. Like, you wouldn't believe it isn't chicken. Like I honestly can't believe it isn't chicken. So let's do this. You have like you said, we couldn't make any announcements today, which is fair, and I'm not asking. But when you're ready to make those announcements, should people be looking?
Well, it'll probably show up on my website, arvellart.com. It might find its way to my Facebook page or my Instagram, or I guess you can just hashtag Arvell Jones, and it'll come up somewhere, and probably on the website for the publisher when it happens.
And I will make sure I make that announcement.
Same thing.
Right, and I will make sure I make whatever announcement is here on the network well known and well publicized here on our pages. So I put the links to Arvell Art in the comments, so you can click that and you can head over there. And everything you need to get a hold of Arvell is there. Are you taking commissions? Is your list open, or are you on such strict deadlines now that you don't have time?
Right now, my deadlines are pretty tight, but I'm thinking that by the end of February, be open to doing commissions again. But right now,
very cool.
I've lost hair, and my hair has gone grayer than it was before. Just taking on the projects with impossible deadlines, but
I know that feeling. That's how I got there. So
mine's blue now, so we don't have to worry about gray for me.
Blue works.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I always have admired about you is your abilities as a raconteur. You have amazing stories, and I always appreciate that. And we have got about 5 minutes left. So the first time we ever met, you told the story about Stan Lee and Batrock the Leaper. Would you mind terribly telling that story?
Well, that was my first regular series at Marvel. Marvel premiere with Iron Fist, and Batrock the Leaper was the villain of the month for that title. Iron Fist was the featured character, and it was my first opportunity to work on a character that I know that Jack Kirby helped create. And Jack was the reason why I was in the business. And at that point, Stan Lee still worked. He still worked at the office on Madison Avenue in New York. In fact, when you walked in and you got past the receptionist, the first office you came to, there was Stan Lee's secretary outside his door, and then there was Stan's office. And if Stan wasn't in a private meeting, his door was always open. Not for people to come in, but so he could look out at you. And one day I walked in, and I'd done it a number of times. I walked in and to meet with Tony Isabella or to pick up some work or something. And, I got in. Josie, who was the receptionist, let me in, and I walked up to, as you turn the corner to your right was Stan's office, and his secretary wasn't in her seat. And I looked in, and Stan's door was open. I think he was on the phone, but I'm not sure. And I looked in and waved at him, like I always did, and he looked at me like, just keep waving at me, and I ignored that and was walking down the hall, and then all of a sudden I heard behind me somebody say, "Who did this book?" And I said, Stan might have a problem with whoever did that book, whatever it is. And I kept walking a couple of more feet, and I heard again, "I want to know who did this book." See, that does sound like Stan. So I look back, and Stan is waving a book, but it's all rolled up in his hand. And he starts walking very briskly towards me. But I'm standing in the middle of the hallway, so I naturally think he's going to walk past me. I turn around to look back at where I was heading to the bullpen, and I noticed everybody in front of me was pointing. It looked like it was at me. And I look back at Stan, and he walks up to me and he says, "Did you do this book? I want to know, did you do this book?" And I was like, "I don't know, Stan." Heart's beating all hard, And I think I'm in real trouble if I did the book, but I couldn't be sure. I just knew Stan Lee is yelling at me. And I said, I can't tell, Stan. You got to. And he unrolls the book in front of me, and my name is about so close. I had to back up and look at it. And it said my name, and my heart sunk. Or no, it didn't really sink. That's wrong. It actually jumped into my throat. And I said, I did it. I figured that was my first and last book for Marvel. And he said, "You did this book? Did you do this book?" Yes, man, I think I did. Is this your name? Yes, it was my name. He goes, "This is fantastic. I love what you did." He turned right to the page with Batrock. I did this maybe 6 or 9 page, or maybe 16 panel page of Batrock and Iron Fist fighting. He said, "This reminds me of me and Jack Kirby back when, Batroc and Captain America were fighting. This is the essence of Marvel. This is great." I am so excited. He just was going off, Excelsior. And then, enough said, Excelsior, give this man a no prize. And he turned and walked away. I'm like, and everybody starts patting me on the back. Stan Lee, congratulations. Anyway, so I breathed a little bit, and then, and I said, he didn't fire me. He actually gave me a compliment. And, I was about to pass out, but
oh my gosh.
My whole quest for trying to get into comics was flashing in front of my eyes. It was going to be a really brief career, a long job interview and a very brief employment.
No, I actually like having all of it.
But no, that was good. Everybody, and then maybe 10, 15, 20 years later, because Keith likes to remind me, he comes up to me and says, Stan, he just wanted to play that joke on you. When I walked in, he saw me kind of lingering back talking to the receptionist. He said, "Who is that guy coming in the door?" And Keith told him who I was and what I was working on. And then Keith said, he asked that just before you walked in.
It was planned.
Yeah,
love
so
it.
he says it was planned. Nobody else has sustained, has substantiated that story, but he told me that. He might have been telling me that just to bring me down, but I'm not letting him take that away from me. Stan Lee told me Excelsior.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
A letter, a long distance phone call from Jack Kirby, and an Excelsior from Stan Lee.
Yes.
So,
I
Not to
can't.
mention enough. Give that man a no prize. Enough said.
Oh my goodness.
Awesome. So we unfortunately, and again, you and I, this, Arvell, you and I could sit and talk all day. But we are unfortunately out of time. So everybody head over to arvellart.com for all the news. Visit the shop. There's a book that Arvell and I kind of did together in the merchandise link there. Marvel's Greatest Creator, Iron Fist. We did a special print run together on that, which was super fun. So head over and check that out and follow that for more news. If you're sticking with us here on the EXP Expo, hang out for just another minute. Hit refresh on this page, and we'll be back with our LCS Spotlight. We've got a bunch of great local comic shop owners coming on to talk about what's happening with local comic shops. So once again, thank you to Arvell. I will see you hopefully in just a very few weeks at Macomb. And we'll see everybody then. Thanks, guys.
Nice to meet you, Jenna.